Uh, I think most of business meets are on Zoom these days.
Correct. Correct. So shall we start, sir?
Yeah, we can start. Yeah.
Okay, so good afternoon and warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us for today's session. This session is on real estate investment ventures, and our guest, Mr. Ananjan Manhot, will help us to understand the nuances of this area. So, Mr. Monoth is founding MD and CEO of Lumos Alternative Investment Advisors Private Limited. Lumos is a real estate private equity firm focused currently on stressed assets. Prior to Lumos Alternative, Mr. Monoth was MD and CEO of M Plus Capital Advisors Private Limited, where he was responsible for setting up a real estate fund for Lalbai Group, Urban Limited. M Plus has successfully invested and exited in the projects of some prominent developers in India. Mr. Monoth has a wide experience in various cross-functional area at some of the leading business conglomerate, including Motilal Oswal, Future Group's real estate focused $450 million Origin Fund, Hassel Group, Reliance Industry, and Little and Company. Mr. Monoth is BCom ONS, LLB, and CA and CS. And so I welcome you, sir, on behalf of the students of Entrepreneurial Finance and Venture Capital. And so far, we have covered modules related to intelligence, cash flow perceptions, cash flow analysis, cash forecasting, working capital management, operating cycle, venture valuations, negotiation, and identification of the CEO. So this is the last session of the course, and we were seeking your seeking for your session for your advice in the area of real estate, how real estate they look at the ventures and all. So welcome you, sir, again, and over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I have been interacting with Adani students from long time, and it's a great privilege to be here and interacting with you. And in fact, I interacted with a lot of students of Adani Institute, and really delighted to know that how the institute is grooming students who who come and they are like they are there on day one of job. So congratulations to everyone. Please feel free to ask any question at any point of time. I'll go through step by step on how the real estate funds in India are operating, what is current business environment, how we decide on any investment making, what is the past experience people had while investing in real estate in funds in India, what is the experience of foreign funds investing in India, and so on. So a wide subject, but I'll just touch on small points on every aspect, and in case you would like to ask something more on that, please feel to ping or just interrupt so that I can clarify there. I'm just sharing a slide which is just an outline on how we all will be going through this session. It'll just take a minute for now. Little bit not comfortable with Zoom, but can you see my screen? Hello?
Yes, sir. Your screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my screen is visible. Hello? You can see my slide number 1. the key discussion point. Hello.
No, sir. Your wallpaper is visible, your home screen, but not your slides, sir.
The key discussion point slide is not visible. Okay.
No, sir.
Just a minute. You'll have to excuse me for a minute.
Okay, sir.
Anyway, it's taking a little bit more time. I will go by without this. Okay. So, hello.
Yes, you are audible, sir.
So I think I'll have to go without the presentation.
No.
That's okay. So, we'll go with the how the real estate investments venture capital ecosystem is there in India. See, there are a lot of advantages of pulling a real estate fund, and the advantage to a ordinary investor who is seeking to diversify its portfolio of real estate investment portfolio across various geographies or across different real estate sectors. So one option with any real estate investor is to invest directly in a residential apartment or a commercial apartment or a small retail mall or something like that. Or the other option is to geographically diverse the same amount in multiple projects, and he gain profit out of that particular project over a definitive period of time. So the need is there of diversification of geography, of the asset class, and all other things. At the same time, for a person who is borrowing, he has a need in a different way. He's looking for equity in its project because a lot of times bank is not able to provide equity at a very early stage of the investments. Okay, see, RBI regulations prohibit lending by banks to any real estate projects for the purpose of land acquisition. So here, capital is limited for any real estate developer. He approaches a private equity fund, take money as an equity or a structured debt, and promises to pay over a period of project cycle. Okay, so it's a win-win situation where a person pools money from different geographies, from different investors, and give to person who really needs it. So this is how the real estate investment managements really work. This particular scheme is regulated by SEBI, and the SEBI guidelines of Alternative Investments Fund, or PMS, or REIT. It provides various method to pool the same money, and and the money is invested with the proper understanding, under regulation of SEBI, with the understanding of investors, and and it's returned back with the a little bit assurances of return on that. We see that there are a lot of real estate funds which are actively working in India. Some domestic funds are Kotak, ASK. Some foreign funds are like Brookfield, Blackstone, CPPIB. Many other real estate funds are active in India. In fact, Amplus Capital Advisors, where I used to work, was one of the prominent real estate investment fund in India, and we used to invest amount between 15 to 30 crore rupee per investments in residential sector, in residential projects, with a time horizon of 3 to 5 years. So it was a early stage investment. The need of capital of real estate developers was fulfilled by us by coming as an early stage equity partner in the project. We did multiple projects. We did at Amplus, we did around 12 projects at at Chennai, Bangalore, Pune, Ahmedabad. Most of money was used for the purpose of acquisition of land. Most of money was used for the purpose of residential projects, and we targeted a mid-market real estate projects where the ticket size of investments for an end user is between 80 lakh rupees to 2 crore rupee. So that was the ideal size where we all were working. We always refrained ourselves in investing in very, very high-end projects, ultra-luxurious projects, or very low-end projects, which people say that affordable housing between 15 lakh rupees to 30 lakh rupees. Out of 12 investments, what we made, we exited in 10, 2 are remaining, and the process is on of divestments of all those. I wanted to show you one picture. I think it's important for me to show the picture because that's a present. That will show how real estate investments are, how we have gone through the entire cycle of investing in real estate and how successful investment was made, how we were, I'll have to, I think it's important for Yeah, finally I'm able to access this. File isn't supported. Okay, we share only PowerPoint files. Okay, I think the problem is only with the PowerPoint file.
I think you can share the screen if so. When you that
I'm
right side there is an arrow.
yeah.
So if you're going to click on that,
Yeah.
then options they will come. So desktop option. When you click on desktop option, then thereafter you can open that file.
Is it coming now?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, fantastic. So, we covered that what are the alternate source of funding, advantages of investing company, advantages for investors. So it's a win-win situation we all create through creating a formal structure of pooling money. And there are, the market is maturing in India. The real estate venture capital in India is just 15-year-old. Okay, and if we see globally, it's as old as 50 years, 60 years. In fact, REITs in India is just 2-year-old. Okay, whereas REIT in US was in 1968. So we are probably 50 years behind global market. So this is the typical structure where how the money is pooled. Okay, we'll just glance on the legal structure. It's framework by the regulatory authority is SEBI. Guidelines of Alternative Investment Fund or AIF, PMS or REIT are different guidelines through which pooling of money is regulated in India. The broad guidelines, SEBI is very liberal in its regulation. All it says that if you want to pool money from people, you should collect minimum amount of 1 crore rupee. Whatever you are doing, you please disclose. And whoever the sponsor is, he should invest 5% of the total commitment amount. So this is a typical legal structure of a REIT, or this is a typical structure of a real estate fund also. So where the center place is there, it's a pool of money. Whatever amount you raise, it's get accumulated in a form of REIT, which is essentially a trust. People also use LLP as a legal structure. Investors and sponsors, they all pool money in this particular trust so that the money, whatever is pooled, is not misutilized and is utilized only for the purpose of the objective for which it was drawn. There is a separate trustee who takes care of the trust. Essentially, this trustee is his position is like President of India, is a signatory, mere signatory. The real work is done by a manager who manages this particular trust, this particular fund. A manager generally decides where to invest, how to invest, the duration of investment, the objective of the fund. In case he want to deviate from the fund objective, he has to drive. He need to take approvals from investors and all. So in Amplus, which was my previous organization, we had 100 odd investors who pooled money in the form of a real estate fund. The sponsors were Arvind Limited, Lalbhai Group, and we invested in multiple projects. So the SPV1, SPV2, SPV3, these are the multiple investments which we made. There were almost around 13 investments, 12 investments which we made. One of the most successful investment which we made was Lumos. After moving out from Amplus, I started my own company and named it Lumos because Lumos was our first investment at Amplus Capital, and it was the most successful investments. We made 2.5 multiple in 2.5 years, and we made 48% IRR for our investors. So how we did it, we bought a land somewhere around 2013 together with the developer. The developer investment was 10 crore rupees. We invested 20 crore rupees to, I'm just giving a framework how we all operate in this entire ecosystem. Okay. So a 10 crore rupees was invested by a developer. We invested 20 crore rupee. We got approvals. We launched the project. We had around 117 odd flats. We launched at a very attractive rate, sold out very fast. And within 2.5 years, we completed most of our sales and most of our construction. At that point of time, we decided that let's move out. We structured an exit with the developer. He paid us back. We made 2.5 multiple. We returned the same amount to our investor. So in the entire process, we took money, 20 crore rupees from our investors in the fund, invested with this particular project, made around 46.1 crore rupees in 2.5 years, returned back this 46.1 crore rupees back to our investor after deducting our fees. So generally, a fund where the manager works on a typical fee structure of around 2% and 20%. So the 2% is the annual fees which we charge, and 20% is the profit sharing. So whatever profits the investor made here, say we invested 20 and made 46. So almost around 26 crore rupee was the total profit, and we made, say, 15-20% based on the negotiation with the individual investor as our share in the profit. Okay, and this is how we made 12 investments, 142, 149, which is in Ahmedabad. We did 3 investments in Pune, 3 investments in Bangalore, Lumos, Luxor, Revanta, 1 investment in Chennai, and most of these investments are now exited. What happened in last 3-4 years on this particular real estate investment business scenario is that there were a lot of regulatory and other uncertainties which came. This all started with demonetization. So November 16 was the demonetization time, and thereafter the entire real estate scenario got changed. So after demonetization, we had RERA, we had GST, which was very bad actually. We again encountered with NBFC crisis where Island FS was collapsed. Thereafter, we saw asset liquidity mismatch in various NBFCs, including Edelweiss, including India Infoline, India Bulls, and all. So, so the entire real estate spectrum got changed in the last 4 years. This seriously affected real estate investing in India. Okay, and that's how the early stage equity investments in India is, I think, it's at one of the lowest level this time, and whatever investments are happening in India by foreigner is in ready position assets. So these assets are, office space like Manyata Tech Park or Embassy Tech Park, which was recently listed. These are leased out to MNCs for IT space, and then thereafter, it's getting discounted to these foreign pension players or fund of funds. And the scale is large, $1 billion, $2 billion per investment. But the profitability is also a yield of around 8% to 9%. This is the broad range. Whereas early stage equity investments, we see a broad return range between 20 to 22%. Okay. Now, after this COVID and all, if we see after COVID and all, the office space in India has also changed significantly because a lot of work from home culture has started, and a lot of offices are shut down. There are a lot of uncertainty in business itself. So let's see how the office scenario, which was the only asset class which was working for last 2 years, 3 years, shapes up over a period of time. Only silver line in these times for a real estate fund, and that's how we started Lumos. We tied up with a prominent real estate developer. Is that the funding which was available from banks, which was available from NBFCs or from funds of funds, is nowhere today. So banks are hesitant to lend to a real estate developer. NBFCs don't have, the capabilities right now to invest. Wherever they invested, they are stuck. A lot of cases are there in IBCs. A lot of resolutions are happening for these stress assets. So the entire real estate sector actually is trying to come out from its past problem. And these all problems, came from last 4-5 years, all got accumulated, in what real estate developers generally say in conferences, that there are tsunamis of events, one after one another, demonetization, it really killed real estate sector. Then the GST, government came out with a GST of 12%, and if you buy a flat worth, say, a crore, a 12 per lakh rupees just as a transaction cost was optically very high for home buyers. And then over and above that, he need to pay another 6% as a stamp duty. So 18% is your transaction cost. So if you buy a crore rupee flat, straight away you pay 18 lakh rupees as a taxes to government. So that affects affordability in big way. Then NBFCs, then election. Yeah, election was actually the problem during 2009 election was that for 6 good months, the sales were dried up. It's a cycle. If a real estate developer is not getting sales on its sales at proper time, then his entire working capital cycle stops. He keeps on defaulting, and once he defaults, RBI regulations prohibit any banker or any NBFC to restructure. Okay, so the restructuring never happened. Defaults started happening, and the problem compounded. Okay, that was the biggest problem. And then now, from last 6 months, COVID, no sales. Banks are banks are at developers' door for recoveries of money, and developers don't have money to pay. So for us, the silver line is that how we acquire stress assets now, complete the project, and create a win-win situation for everyone. It will provide exit to NBFCs, it will provide exit to banks, and it will provide exit to the customer also. Because in India, almost around 4 lakh units are not completed. It's at a stage where these are delayed beyond 2 to 3 years, and a home buyer is paying rentals as well as EMI. So it's a typical problem which the real estate sector is facing, and we are finding that somewhere if we work on stress assets, it could be a win-win for the investor also.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Sir, for a startup, which is a startup in a real estate sector, how do the startup should look forward to attain funds from your side, or what strategies should they have, and how do you look in segments that this startup could be a highly profitable one, or something that could be of high growth in future in real estate sector, especially because in other sectors there are various unique selling points and services that differentiate them. But how do you look upon in startups in real estate sectors, especially?
So, the startups can add huge value in identifying a project, through their artificial intelligence, through their, all, what you say, algorithms and all, where they can provide a good input to an end customer, saying that this particular developer has a history of delivering on time. His financial capabilities are really bright, and it's safer to buy a product from him. So I think see, rating. Generally, a developer gets rating from CARE or ICRA or something like that for to build a confidence among a customer. So I think the first thing that there are a lot of value addition a startup can do, multiple ways. It can provide a lot of comfort to customers. It can a startup can value add to expedite the construction timeline, to remove the inefficiency in the construction period, to optimize BOQs also. A lot of times we see huge cost escalation in project. In fact, we have suffered multiple times where the Envisage cost was 40 crore and the final bill was 50 crore rupees. A 10 crore rupee escalation is huge. So real estate as such, it's a very, very, I'll say it's a business where technology has not just come inside any developer's organization. So there are huge chances, huge scope of improvement. How money can be raised? I think somewhere there are a lot of angel funds who are who are investing in this. What we generally do is we invest only at project level. So if a developer has shortlisted a land, if a developer has shortlisted a project, if he's looking to raise equity, we come as a partner with him. So we, he assesses a equity capital, say 50 crore rupees. He look, whatever the minimum requirement of a particular project is. And if he says that I will invest 15 crore, you invest 35 crore, and let's be a partner. So this is how we typically work. We as an organization, we are not, into that kind of technology. But what we see is that, if the technology is there, it will really help us in improving our entire ecosystem. Yes.
So, sir, how do you see that a project could be a developer who is approaching you for some investment, and the project they are presenting could be something that would bring a next level thing in the society, because there are many other people who are just utilizing a bank debt or working with their family funds in the real estate sector?
No, I think somewhere, people, developers are realizing that it's important to receive money from a organized player rather than raising money from a friends, family, and within their own personal ecosystem. In fact, developers are also realizing that it's very important to go to a private equity and not just be dependent on a banker. The reason is very simple. This particular person, Lumos, with whom Assets was the developer's name, with whom we worked. It was our first investment with this guy. He raised money from a private equity guy from the first time from us. Okay, and we also betted on because of his track record. After we invested, he has raised more than 800 crore rupees from different sources of organized players. So JP Morgan, your Lugos, and multiple funds, they have invested with him. So this particular size is not possible when we raise money from our own friends and family and circle. Creation of a ecosystem of receiving money from an organized player has its own advantages. So people approach organized player and they love to work with them, and they demonstrate to others that how for a 3 years, 5 years during the project cycle, they have maintained transparency with their partners. They have provided exits to their partners, and they have successfully completed the project. So that brings a lot of confidence to a lot of large investors. The only problem which India had, in India, when our economy opened up somewhere around 2004 for real estate funds, okay, n number of funds came to India. All world best funds, they all came to India, invested heavily. Up to 2009 in real estate, the investments by global players was huge. But then, because of the lack of transparency among the developers, ecosystem, developers organization, almost everybody lost money. And then these all people who were bringing tons of money to India, they all stopped. They all stopped for a good 3-4 years. And they then started investing in structured debt. Instead of providing equity, they started working on a structured debt. And they, again, after 2013, they started losing again money in real estate. And from 2016 onwards, these players are investing only in now ready assets. They say that we don't believe in early stage equity investments with the Indian developers. There are developers, maybe 8-10 people who are still receiving money from global players. But given the size of this country, at least 100 people, 200 people should qualify to borrow money, to raise money from global players. But our ecosystem was like that, gradually the trust factor in the real estate industry vanished. But now it's coming back again. People have learned a hard lesson. People have realized their mistakes. Now, gradually, they are moving towards more transparent system, more professional system, and probably over next 3-4 years, we should be there again with the same level of investing what we saw in 2004 to 2009. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. So, what we see is that, in the new types of funds which are now coming is also in co-living, co-working, which was not there earlier. Warehousing is something which is getting traction. A company like IndoSpace is really doing well. Probably it was the first company which was focusing on creating world-class warehouses in India. Okay, after it created that kind of ecosystem, there are 6-7 good players which has come to in India who are doing warehousing in a big level, at a big scale. So things are changing. Things are changing from unorganized to organized, from from small to large. It's concentrated. A lot of developers are vanishing. A lot of old business systems are moving away, and this disruption is for real. And the way in which this business of real estate venture capital is also changing. Earlier, a lot of fund managers realize that writing a check is sufficient, and developer will come back and give back money. It never happened. Then in 2003, they realized that we should become a co-signatory, and and we should monitor projects very closely. That will take away all problems, all ingenuity of developers, and they will be returning money to us. So that also failed. Now the last thing which remain, and this is also we are now trying, is we say that passive management in venture in investing company is gone. Co-signatory project management, that is also gone. They will now do active management, active participation with the developer. That means our own person will be sitting on the project to make sure that the project is completed, okay, and people don't lose money. So it is much beyond the the check writing, because in check writing also becoming a co-signatory is also has not produced any result for real estate developers. So the rules are changing in venture capital fund, particularly in real estate, and a lot of I'll say real estate fund managers have vanished in last 5-6 years. A lot of investors have lost their interest in India and real estate in investments in India, unless and until it is done very in a different way. But fortunately, with 2-3 people doing excellent job, I'll say one of the leading fund, which is Kotak and ASK, and of course Motilal Oswal, they are doing excellent work, which is keeping a hope of investors that yes, this particular industry is sustainable and is sustainable in a right way. And of course, Brookfield, Blackstone, their own way of working, their own the investments in India are performing well. In fact, Embassy, along with Blackstone, they raised one of the first REIT in India, which was $1 billion REIT, and it was subscribed, I will say, 20-30 times, and it's really successful. So, encouraged by that REIT, recently K. Raheja Corp, they invested. They came out with REIT, and my belief is that in future we'll have more and more REITs, and which will provide another spectrum of investing for real estate investors in India. Yeah. Any questions on any point which you would like to understand, particularly from the current business environment, or on the real estate investment fund side?
Sir, I have one doubt. Sir. How does the demand volatility affect this investment?
Sorry?
How demand volatility affect this capital investment?
It seriously impact. Now, because today we are very concerned about the demand. So my entire assumptions has changed. I'm not sure what kind of selling price I will get today if we launch a project. we are not sure of the velocity of sales if we launch project. So the investments almost for last 6 months are on hold. I don't think anybody has invested in last 6 months in India. Only thing is, everybody is hoping that first the vaccine will come, probably by say December or January, and business will start opening say Jan, February, same time. And at that particular time, we'll see macro numbers. We'll see that the economy has stabilized. It has come out from the negative territory, and at that time, probably we'll be able to decide what assumptions we should make on the velocity. Of course, customers are concerned today, and most of customers today have shifted to a ready position inventory rather than buying the under construction. So that particular shift has also played a very a very big role in project launch, and that has increased the capital requirement. And if the capital requirement has increased, obviously the return on equity will decrease substantially. So we are concerned. 2-3 silver lines in between this is that government is reducing stamp duty. Maharashtra government has already reduced it to 2%. There are chances that GST is reduced from 5% to 2% for some time, maybe for 3-4 months. That can bring demand in a big way. So we are hopeful that as soon as this is done, probably we'll see that the capital flow starts again. So demand has its own problem. Demand is affecting investments.
Sir, what are the various factors which delayed this REIT structure in India?
What are the factors which delayed REIT structure? Multiple factors. The first factor was the abnormal taxation. Okay. Now, if I have to see, I'll say before 2 years, if I have to launch a REIT, the first thing I need to do is to transfer my asset to a trust. Okay. As soon as I transfer my asset to a trust, I need to pay my capital gain tax. Okay. I need to do a fair valuation and all. I need to pay stamp duty. So my cost of transaction was huge. Okay. Again, a property created 20 years back, 15 years back has its own value. Now, if I transfer it to a trust, the capital will be completely different. I acquired property at 100, transferring at 200. So on a gain of 100, I need to pay capital gain tax now. Okay. So it's an immediate cash flow, a problem. So that plus stamp duty. And then there were a lot of issues related to the taxation in the hands of the investors. Fortunately, government has clarified a lot. They have provided pass-through arrangements in REIT. They have provided appropriate exemptions in stamp duty. They have provided appropriate relief in capital gains and all. So now it has become more conducive. So I think the transaction cost was the biggest barrier, to put it very simply, which affected.
Hello, sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sir, if, for example, I am new player in the market, I know the whole process of making the building and everything, and the full cost is 5 crore rupees. After all the investment, it takes 5 crore rupees, and I have 1 crore rupees in my hand, and I want investment from your side. So how will I approach to you for the 4 crore rupees, and how you will see that this 4 crore rupees will be benefit from my side?
Yeah.
Because I am new player in the market.
See, generally, a private equity players, has its own objectives, okay, or the criterias of investing. Uh, our criteria was a developer having 10, 15 years in business, must have made 20, at least 20 lakh square feet in last, say, 10, 15 years, must have borrowed money from a banker, given it back to him, tried and tested. Okay. Now, if you are a new, okay, uh, probably a lot of funds may be hesitant in funding you. Okay. But then there are certain funds which may, evaluate your projects. They may try to take a controlling stake in your project, and probably their terms will be more stringent than any other, normal private equity investment. So, plus at the same time, the size do matter. Okay, so there are a lot of players in India like Kotak or Altico or any other, or ICICI and something like that. Ticket size is investing minimum 100 crore rupee in that. So I'll say that in India, the availability of fund, is restricted in multiple ways. So very few players in a particular bracket, very few players in a particular bracket. So possible to get, but again, it's you need to see that you approach probably a fund which has that kind of objective, who can invest 4 crore rupees with you. Plus, you need to accept the conditions which they are imposing. I believe I've seen many times that a lot of developers are hesitant in accepting very stringent clauses put by them, put by any investors. But ideally, a developer must appreciate the fact that a fund is also looking for its own protection. Apart from is trying to experiment with a new guy. So if you meet the conditions, probably you should be able to read them. I see that there are two questions. Good evening, sir. It is better to invest in tier 2, 3 cities where he can get more in it for the money he pays. Is better to invest in. See, tier 2 and tier 3 cities in India are very cyclical. In fact, given chance, I don't advise to people to invest in India, in Ahmedabad also. So best cities for investing is today Bangalore, Pune, Chennai, or maybe NCR, not tier 2 or 3 cities. The value available there is far much, But of course, if it is end use, today tier 2 city and 3 cities are providing really good value. So, if it is end use, no doubt. I have come to many developers are borrowing from financiers, and after completion, they are giving ready. This way, they are selling around 20. Would this be good for financier? Is this correct matter? See, the question is that, I've seen many developers are borrowing funds from financiers, and after completion of projects, they are giving ready assets to financier instead of money. This way, they are selling around 15-20% of their projects. Would this be a good for financier? Is this correct method? Actually, this is business model of Ahmedabad. In Ahmedabad, a developer buy a property and just dispose of 15-20% of project to a financier at a discounted price. This particular scheme, we don't like it. The reason is that the financier carry huge risk. Suppose if the project is not completed, then where this money will come from, and it has happened in many ways. People have, the risk is too high to fund in this. But this is something which is prevailing in Ahmedabad, and people are taking this. I'll say that, if a financer lose money even in one project, this will be good enough for what returns he has made in last 5 years, 6 years. So probably we should refrain from investing in, under construction property at a discounted price and, taking completed project once the project is completed. Yes, sir. Any other questions?
Sir,
Yeah.
if any project faces any crisis
Mm-hmm.
and flats or residential flats are not totally booked,
Mm-hmm.
then at that situation, how the financer will see that situation and how it will be help to the developer?
Actually, this is the problem of entire country right now. There are more than 4 lakh units which are not constructed, and the lenders are struggling to recover money. So recently, SBI has come out with a new real estate fund called Swami Fund, which is a 25,000 crore rupee fund. And this particular fund will fund only those under construction property where some money is required, and that particular money will help developer to complete it. And exit to a financer in India, unfortunately, happens only when project is completed. Taking developer to a SURFACE or a NCLT or DRT has no use. So, the recovery of money in these cases, if the project is not complete, it's a risk. So what we used to say, to our investors, that people may say that we have provided a loan to a real estate developer, but it is not a loan. It is actually a equity, because unless and until a project is completed, the loan carries same risk as equity, but carry lesser returns. So we says that we always maintain that we will provide equity because my recovery is dependent on completion of project, and debt's recovery is also dependent on completion of project. So if the risk profile of recovery is same in 2 different class, then why should I take lesser return? I should take complete return. So so it's a problem. So the completion is must for recovery of money, and financiers are in trouble because of uncompleted project.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other question? Sir, some light on term sheet negotiation.
Yeah.
Like how term sheet negotiation is taking place in a real estate venture kind of situation.
Yeah. So, we go through a complete process of evaluation, and then, the term sheets are issued to any developer after we are convinced that we are investing in this fund, in this particular project, how it goes. So generally a developer approaches for requirement, say in this particular case, I'll go through this example. In this particular case, in Lumos, this guy came to us and he said, we need 20 crore rupees. We said, if you need 20 crore rupees, you do 10 crore investment. So he agreed on that. We evaluated developer profile first, before issuing any term sheet. We saw whatever he has done in last 10 years profile. We spoke to his banker. His banking relationship was with SDFC Bank. So we spoke to the bankers saying that, is he paying on time? How is his transparency? How is his data? We spoke to his employees also, officially, unofficially, how his entire ecosystem within his organization is. That, he should not be morally corrupt. The biggest problem in real estate is that if you go on wrong on people, the investment can go wrong. So we spoke to his vendors, his creditors, found out his credentials. Thereafter, we evaluated the project, saying that, what kind of numbers it can make, whether we will be able to achieve 5,000 rupees per square feet on this particular project. So we visited all surrounding areas, found out what is the economic profile of that particular location is. Once we were convinced that, yes, this particular project can achieve a broad range between 4,700 to 5,500, we said it makes sense to invest in this project. So once that kind of conviction came, then we started negotiating on the terms of the term sheets. So it included, we having a person on board as a director in the company. We will be signing checks along with him. Our person will be regularly monitoring his project. He has to, every week, he has to give a MIS to us saying that what kind of money has come in the SPV, how much he has spent. He has to take budgetary approvals from us. He has to take approvals from us for any increase in price or any decrease in price. You should not be, doing business in a very hanky-panky way, because every revenue, whatever he is doing, since I'm an equity investor, I benefit or lose from the sales decision what he makes or cost decision he makes. Okay, so our interference was there, and he has to appreciate that, yes, there will be interference. So that is the broad contour of the term sheet which we agreed. And then we also discussed that what if something goes wrong? Okay, this also become a problematic. Let's say if he cheats after we invest, if he divert money, if he do something hanky-panky, then what? So in those cases, we have provided penalty clauses. We have provided, step-in rights where we just throw him out at a particular value, saying that, you invested 3 crore rupees, we pay you 3 crore rupees, you move out, project is mine. Some very, very stringent clauses we try to put in the term sheet. Once the term sheet is agreed, once we finalize the term sheet, we then take it to our investment committee. So our investment committee generally comprises of a lot of investors. So in Amplus, we had an investment committee of 9 people. Okay, and these 9 people are people who invested with us, people who invested 10 crore, 15 crore rupees with us. And then once they say that, yes, the developer seems good, the project seems good, the term seems good, go and invest it. So then we invest it. So this is how, the investment process goes through.
Thank you.
And the same cycle happens in the, exit also. So once we decide that we need to exit, we negotiate price, we take it to investment committee saying that this is the need of exit, we should exit now, this is the price, need to justify the price, and then we move out.
So how is it like, is it difficult to convince Indian entrepreneurs when you look at it in terms of VC or PE kind of situation? So PE and VC guy, they are very in a kind of difficult or dilemma kind of situation when they are trying to convince the Indian entrepreneurs, because market is different from US or UK. So,
absolutely. So I will say that the convincing people in Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai is very easy, is relatively easy, because the developers there, they have seen that once a person has taken private equity money, how exponentially he has grown. Okay, so everybody's wish list there is to raise private equity money, even in real estate. So I will say that in these cities, it is relatively very easy to convince people. Of course, conditions, a lot of people have their own hesitations that आप क्यों चेक पे साइन करना चाहते हैं, आप क्यों अपना बंदा बैठाना चाहते हैं, है ना, हमको रोज इंटरफेयर करेंगे तो हम बिजनेस कैसे करेंगे. ओके, so there
are they not able to digest the concept of advisors, like because you are coming as an advisor for the firm, so still there?
I think somewhere the need of money is that they accept everything at first. Okay, then the real resistance starts after investments. Okay, once the need of money is over, then the real color comes out. Okay, and then it's a pain problem. I think it's like a new marriage, and compatibility takes 3-4 months, and once we understand tuning of each other, then probably the ride is smooth for next 2-3 years. So, but Delhi is a big problem. I will say Ahmedabad is huge problem. In Ahmedabad, I will say that except one developer, we were not able to fund any other person. The reason is that they accept cash. We tell them that you should not accept cash. वो बोले कैश के बिना धंधा नहीं होता है, बिजनेस ही नहीं हो सकता यहाँ पे. तो अब आप कैश लोगे तो how I will distribute money back to my investors? Will I give back cash? No, it can't. And SEBI will say that आप cash में business कर रहे हो अपना. It's not possible. So we were not able to do. And developers are, I think they are very averse of documents. So बोले पैसा रख के जाओ आप, हम आपको दे देंगे पैसा, documents नहीं करेंगे sign. So different city and different approach. But 3 cities I will say that they are really good. That's why most of our investments were in Bangalore, Chennai, Pune, Hyderabad. Comfortable ecosystem, clean people, God-fearing people, I will say. So and they want to grow, and that's why the city has grown in a big way.
So there's a question from Dev. He's asking, as a financer, what type of securities you look for your investment?
The first security is the person. Actually, because after taking money, we have to deal with this guy. If we don't accept our, presence in his ecosystem, literally we are in difficult position. So the first security is person, and after that, of course, since we try to be a majority partner in any investment, so our stake is usually between 60 to 70%. If there are some mischiefs in the SPV, we take management control of the SPV. We had taken in past, say in Pune, we had a huge difficulty while dealing with a developer. The developer was really good. He has done multiple private equity transactions, clear guy, 20 years in business, one of the biggest person in Pune. But because of economic condition, it was like कहते ना कि अपने existence में सब फिर बदमाशी चालू हो जाती है. So then we forcefully acquired. We told him that you have to take backseat. We are taking over management, and we took over management of the company, and that really worked. So once the management of the company is in our hand, so the underlying always remain in the SPV. So we know that we will be able to complete the project. So the advantage of doing a small project is also that, say, like in Lumos, this particular project, the construction cost of cost was around 50 odd crore rupees. We had kept a provision of 15 crore rupees, and then we said, worst come worst, we will have to invest another 10 crore rupees to complete the project at any point of time, because kuch to paisa sales, pre-sales se aayega. So we keep that kind of buffer of money to make sure that the project is complete. And we try to achieve financial closure. So it's it's relatively safer than the calls people used to do earlier. So underlying is land, which is secured. We become majority partner. We try to take management control, and that's the way we secure ourselves.
Any question, please, guys? Any question, participants?
Am I audible? Ajay here.
Yes, 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 please.
Sir, can
Yes.
you have mentioned about the demonetization? Can you elaborate more about that? How it has been impacted on real estate and overall economy of India?
So demonetization, what it really did is that any disruption which comes suddenly, and which put economy on standstill for say 2 months, 3 months is good enough to break the working capital cycle. Okay. So during demonetization time, what really happened is that the entire country was busy in exchanging currency. Okay. And the entire business cycle was stopped for a good 2-3 months. Now, if you suppose a developer who has an assumption that every month he will do 100 unit sales or 50 unit sales, and if that money doesn't come, he has to pay to his banker on first of every month, his EMI, his interest, everything. Now, if that cycle of sales is broken, and if that money circulation is broken, then of course there were defaults, the defaults in real estate. There were concerns on real estate because a lot of developers were selling in cash. A lot of money was paid in cash. See, I'll not comment on good or bad. People should not accept cash. Okay, but they were doing. It was known fact. And knowing unknowing, it was contributing to country's economy. Cash circulation बुरा था भला था जो था लेकिन directly indirectly it was benefiting country because money was paid back to your workers, suppliers. The whole entire cycle was disrupted. So demonetization as such was a big disruptor, and it disrupted really 3-4 months. Then GST came. GST added it. We could have recovered from demonetization, but the events were very fast. Before we actually recovered from demonetization, we had GST, we had RERA. So whole chaos was there, big time chaos. And I'll tell you, in GST, the biggest problem which we are facing even today, earlier the GST rate was 12% for under construction and 0% for ready possession. Now a building which is getting completed in next 6 months, generally a buyer will say that let's wait for 6 months because on ready possession there is no GST, I will not pay any tax, 0%. But on under construction I will pay 12%. So a 1 crore rupee flat, straightway you save 12% tax. Of course there were credits and all, but generally credits in India are never passed on. So any project which was 6 months away from completion, the sales literally dried up. And if the sales is dried up, then again the working capital cycle stops. You are not able to recover money, no new sales. You have to pay to bankers, you have to pay to your employees, you have to pay your own obligations, everything, contractors, everything. So that really impacted. Now then government gave an option after some time saying that, okay, if you don't take credit, it is 5%. Okay, it really helped. Okay, it really helped. So we have now two options, 12% and 5%. But again, it is actually a problem also till date, but with a lesser intensity. So one after another disruptions created a lot of havoc in real estate. It started from demonetization and it is continuing till date. So COVID has no correlation with this demonetization, but it is part of the same chain where it is started and now where it is heading. The problems are compounding by one event and another. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Can we?
Sorry.
Shall I take one more question?
Easily, sir. Yeah.
Okay, so is government policies they are attracting investors to put more money, like affordable housing schemes and all?
Of course, the affordable housing, frankly, has got huge government push. Okay, I will say that it is one of the best scheme which this government had on affordable housing, because you get interest subsidy, which makes your housing affordable. You have ATIB for developers, which incentivize developer to get into affordable housing segment. But then there are problems. Why affordable housing has not picked up in India, okay, in a way which government was desiring. It has huge tax incentives, I interest incentives, but it has not come to a level where what was desired and what is happening now, because of land prices, because of planning time period. You need at least 1 year to get your plan sanctioned. Now, if you buy a land, say you bought a land of say 100 crore rupee, and if you wait for a year, that means you have already incurred a cost of say 12-13% on that particular land. Okay, so this cost, who has to bear? Finally, end user has to bear. Okay, so our planning process, our approval process, that has to simplify so that quick churn happens in projects. So if from acquisition of land to say delivery, if it takes 18 to 24 months, affordable housing will be huge successful in India. But that unfortunately is not happening. Government should provide land at subsidized rate, but that also.
Any other question, please? If you have any question, ask. One more question we can take.
No,
Yashraz, you are writing. Okay, so what about investing in fully commercial projects like malls? Is the fundraising process same or it's a bit different? And please share a defaulter story in commercial projects, if any. So this is the question from Yashraz.
Yeah. So in malls, I'll say I was working with one of the first mall focused fund in India, which was Kshitij and Horizon Fund. It was $450 million fund. And if you see in Ahmedabad, this Gulmohar Mall was invested by us. Mall story, unfortunately, in India has impacted by this Amazon's, Flipkarts, and now Jio. Okay. Of course, it is an experience for which people would like to go. But then bulk of purchasing now is happening through your online channels. And after COVID, for last 6 months, people are now used to buy online. So further investments in mall will be will be very, very selective, very, very selective. The process of raising fund is simple. It's same. A lot of institutions across world are looking for income yielding assets. Like if you see Alpha One Mall of Ahmedabad, that was I think Blackstone has acquired the mall completely, because they are relying on a very, very stable rental income for their portfolio. They are happy with getting 7-8% yield every year and owning an asset. So there are people who love to invest in projects like malls or commercial project at a lower yield, but going forward, there will be challenges and there will be very, very selective investment. And please share a defaulter story in commercial project. Many defaulters. I think I'll say defaults in real estate is huge. Anyone going to Mumbai, as soon as you cross Bandra Valli ceiling, you will see a Kohinoor Square Tower. It's one of the tallest building in the country. That is the tower of failure. People have invested in a big time. It got semi-completed. Bank of Baroda, Edelweiss, lot of funders who have invested more than 800, 900 crore rupees. They are looking to exit this particular project. But unfortunately, matter is in court, and court is taking its own time. Your company invest in form of equity or financing. We prefer to invest in equity. We prefer to invest in equity because we believe that in India, loan and equity has same risk profile. Though, because our judicial system, judiciary, it take its own time. Let me tell you one small experience which I am having in Bangalore. We have purchased a project in Bangalore, and our land is next to a defense location. And after Pathankot, defense stopped us from constructing. So after Pathankot attack, so we approached Karnataka High Court 3 years back, and we filed a writ petition. So a writ petition actually is a petition which ideally a court should look in a very, very, urgent way, because it's a breach of fundamental rights. It's a 3 years now. Still we have not heard. Okay. And now, even if we court hear this matter, let's say we will win or we will lose. If we win, say after 1 year, the defense will go to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court will take another 5 years to decide on our case. And if we lose, we will go to Supreme Court and we will fight for 5 years. So there is no end. So I think giving loan or banking on Indian judiciary or Indian legal system is not an option. And in loan documents, finally, you have to rely on judiciary for enforcement of any right. अगर आपको अपना डॉक्यूमेंट एग्जीक्यूट करवाना है तो आपको कोर्ट में जाना ही पड़ेगा, और कोर्ट कितना टाइम लेगा आपको नहीं पता है. Unfortunately, a fund don't have SARFAESI. Bank has a SARFAESI, so there is no level playing field. So my problem is that a banker has a SARFAESI. It can take over project in say 6 months. I don't have SARFAESI. I have to take over through process of law. It can take years. So, so there is no parity. I think there is one more question which says that how many more years it will take to raise the real estate from all the crises. I think the reply is never. See, all I see is that, there is space for everyone, and that is where the hope is. Okay. I meet, day in, day out to developers across India. Okay. There are developers who make 1 building, 2 buildings in a year. And then there are developers who makes 10 buildings, 15 buildings, 20 buildings in a year. I'll say that both types of developers will continue to be there in this system. Okay. And there is a space. The market size is huge. I will say that, 90% developers, they all are thugs. They all are like, they don't know corporate ethics. They don't know corporate values. But the people who are in 10% bracket, they will keep on doing good business. They will keep on getting private equity funding, banking funding, NBFC funding. And finally, they will run, a larger length. They will travel more. And the people who are fraud, they will be eventually wiped out. Maybe it may take 5 years, 10 years, but they will wipe out. So the cup is, the cake is big. So I think I don't worry about the whether it grows or not. So even if the real estate sector remain wherever it is, the size is so huge that I can survive. We all can survive. All we need to do is that keep doing good work. That's it. DLF also announced affordable housing. I agree with you, but the problem is that most of developers who announce that they are going into affordable housing, my suggestion is that you search Mahindra announcing affordable housing, okay, Godrej announcing affordable housing, and you will see that from 2009 onwards they are announcing. Nobody has really done real work in affordable housing, real work, and real work comparative to their size. 1 or 2 projects, I don't count that. See that the way in which they look is that DLF has one project called Chameleon in Gurgaon. There is selling one flat for 50 crore rupees. And in affordable housing, to get a revenue of 50 crore rupees, if the unit cost is 20 lakh rupees, so how many units he will have to sell to achieve that 50 crore rupees? Huge. And how many customer interaction? How many sales force he has to do? He will have 50 people sitting in his office, talking to customers. So for 50 crore and 20 lakhs, say he'll have to deal how many people? 100 odd people. And so the number is huge. It doesn't make sense for these people to get into all these affordable housing. They announced to keep people, to keep government happy, to keep state government happy. Whenever they say that they need some permission, they keep aside a small project, make it. That's it. The stock market, a stock market cherries on this affordable housing thing, because a lot of analysts don't understand that really it is one of the riskiest business for a real estate developer. So the reason why we never ventured into affordable housing was because it's worked on a very, very thin margin. The margin of business is just 300, 400 rupees per square feet. And if there is any cost escalation, the entire margin wipes out. So we don't really do affordable housing.
Okay, great, sir. I, on behalf of the participants of the EABC course and on my own behalf, extend a very hearty thank to you for gracing your important work and sharing with us your experience and opinion for the day. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your being here. Thanks for your participation. Thank you so much, sir. Thank
you, everyone. And sincere apologies for the technical issues which I had, because I'm not little bit conservative with this team and all, but probably next time it will be good. And you can, you can be touched in offline also for any queries, whatever you have there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.